da 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 da.
Being a 13-year-old boy and also being a Jew, they were my age and they were my religion. It's incredible that they're still here and they're telling this story that's just amazing because if I was living there, I would have been through the same thing.
I was 14 and they put us in a boys' home. And there it was a former school which had, I think, about 7 classrooms. And in each of them, like in our room number 1, there were 40 boys, you know, it was really a crowded place.
We had humor even in this most horrible situation. And I want to stress that children are very realistic. Let's say children's humor. And they were not bad, or we were well educated.
We always hoped to escape, but where would we escape? There was no way to escape. 15, 16 years old, well, they would recognize us right away. We had to wear a yellow star. Of course, once you got to Auschwitz, that was impossible.
And do you think often about them, about the boys?
No, I didn't, and I didn't talk about it for many years. But eventually.
We were 13 to 16-year-old kids. I was the youngest one.
What did you all talk about with one another, the boys?
With the boys, well, all kinds of things, girls.
That you can imagine or cannot how difficult it is when we were spoiled kids not to be on our own, and now to be in the beginning, we were not even allowed to get out of the house because there were still civilians there, so we were confined to the building. And 40 boys, spoiled ones, in one room was a real mess. You know, very difficult, lots of fighting and arguments and so on.
We had pillow fights and all this, what guys do, what stupid things what they do.
They were boys then.
And you were one of them?
Yep.
Men, now in their 80s.
Do you dream about this at all?
No, I tell you the truth, I don't.
Held as prisoners in a concentration camp during the Holocaust. In this building, in Terezin.
Terezin was the waiting hall for Auschwitz.
Located northwest of Prague.
So all the people waited for killing, to be killed.
The serious moments were when people were put into transport. That's when you started to lose a friend, and you were saying, well, when is my turn? That's when it started to remind you that something bad can happen to you.
The children were separated from their parents, and the boys were separated from the girls.
The parents weren't able to protect us. The atmosphere of occupation of Nazis, the whole country, was very terrifying. I remember that when the German army invaded Prague, we were on the street, all the Czechs, looking, and the Czechs were, part of them were angry, part of them were weeping, part of them, they didn't know what to do to them.
after they left their homes in Prague, Brno, Plzeň, and got in here, they grew up and they became adults. They had no childhood, the children here.
I think it's amazing that the boys that were our age were able to survive this and just go every day in this horrible situation.
Terezin. I was a child once, 2 short years ago. My youth was longing for another world. I am a child no longer. I saw things to make me blush. Now I am adult and have known terror. Bloody words and murdered day, that is no longer just a bugaboo. Friday evening. A year now I've been in the Terezin ghetto. A year now I've watched a people destroyed. A year now I've stared at walls cracking and peeling.
What were you hoping for?
Well, I was hoping for that we somehow or other the war will come to a finish, but which didn't. Of course, it was early days.
The school building the boys lived in was known as L417.
L417 block was only Czech boys.
This is a story about those boys.
Your life was at stake, really.
Yeah, well, if they would have found it.
And their secret.
I was in a different room. There were many rooms, 10 rooms, I think.
Yehuda Bacone.
So that's a picture of me.
Leo Lowy and Emil Kopp.
That's you.
That's me, yeah.
Sidney Tausig, George Brady.
Find the right one.
Now live in 4 countries covering 3 continents.
I was adopted by the American Army.
Nearly 70 years ago, they lived together.
There were bed bugs, there were fleas.
In one of those rooms in L417.
There were lice.
On the bottom floor.
While I was there, we had on that room polio, we had typhoid.
That room.
Room number 1.
Was also known as Home 1.
Well, in Home 1, as kids, we had fun, we were talking, there was a lot of writing to be done with songs and everything. We had a life there.
Home 1 is part of a museum now and a memorial.
Here we are in the Home 1, building L417, home of the boys of the Jewish ghetto of Terezin.
On the walls, names of all the children in Terezin who perished.
10,500 names. All children mostly under the age of 14, 15.
In Home 1,
Polak Hanush perished.
Where Emil Koppel lived for 2 years as a kid.
Roth Walter perished.
Awaiting his fate.
Helle Hanush Anyo is perished.
About 100 boys passed through. 40 boys lived in that one room at any given time.
The children's home wouldn't be so packed. They say the bunk beds would be probably lower or smaller in general. This is a recreated scene of a home for men or women. Most of the stuff here is original. It comes from the prisoners who were passing through. The luggages, their clothes, the beddings. Only the wooden bunk beds and the chairs and so is recreated, renovated.
There were many of them. Unfortunately, only a few survived.
Only 15 of those boys in Home 1 survived.
So many boys did not make it.
Did not make it, no. They didn't make it, and very few of us came back. Therefore, it took many, many years to find each other.
What happened in Home 1 between the years 1942 and 1944
1, 2, 3, 1.
is a story these boys in Seattle, Washington are now learning about.
Our teachers kept us organized.
Through music.
The music really makes you feel the words, and the words makes you use your imagination and how it was.
We were no different than you. We were no different than you.
And if these boys from the Northwest Boy Choir don't know it already,
Though we had football matches, though we had drills at school,
they will learn luck had so much to do with who lived and who didn't during the Holocaust.
As if imagination were a Jew.
I actually thought it was kind of scary what they were doing to all these boys. I mean, they were just kids.
Kids who were about to do something that defies logic. They would create beauty under the most horrible circumstances.
They did something spectacular. They used their imaginations. They painted, they told stories, they wrote poems.
My heart is so cruel to me. It will not let me dream.
I just thought that was pretty moving how with just like pieces of work that kids our age would write, they would like pretty much keep them alive and keep them sane through this horrible situation that they were going through.
And then they started the Vedam magazine, and that was how they kept alive.
Today I said, the heart is a fire. I have no strength to put it out.
It's amazing to me that you could be 14 years old and write some of the poetry that was in Vedam.
Silently, lightly, slowly it drifts down onto the black and bleeding earth. From somewhere up high, steadily descending, whirling in the air on a tender breeze.
I never knew about Vedam, and I was really surprised how many great things they did.
The magazine Vedam, which means in English, we are the first.
We all had a pseudonym, and I was named Horse. Other boys had different names. George Brady was known as a bear.
What was your nickname?
Blesk, which was a thunder, and Trixie. And Trixie came from I used to go with a girl, I was infatuated with a girl, her name was Trixie. So they used to call me Trixie.
Everyone had to give a quote every week.
Quote of the week.
And my quote of the week was, the doctor asked me,
do you perspire frequently?
Do you perspire frequently?
Horst Lowy.
Yes, I do, but mostly my feet. Why, I don't know. There was also a ballad written about me, and the reason it was written because we had cards, to get food, and for some reason I always used to lose it. I don't know why. So they wrote a parody about me.
What's in this is really the life of the young guys. What they were doing, their thoughts, what they were thinking. Some of them took it very hard that they lost freedom.
It was created out of boredom, out of unknown things, and it was created just what they thought, what was in their mind, what we were hoping for.
14 players are running around the field. The match is underway. The crowd hums with excitement. He comes in on the goal. He shoots, but the goalkeeper dives after the ball and stops it. A mighty round of applause.
Among the boys written about in Vedam, Mendel Kopolovich. He later changed his name to Emil Kopel.
Of the two of you, who was the soccer player? Who's the
Well, I think I would be the better soccer player.
Yes,
You're a good referee, I was told.
We put the singers on this side, the strings over there, and Lori over here with the singers.
It's horrible, it makes you want to cry. It makes you feel so sad that these children had to go through that. It's heart-wrenching, And so I actually have to distance myself from putting myself in their place because otherwise I couldn't write the piece.
Yes. Put the two strings together. Yeah.
And if you're a performer and you're singing these words, you have to distance yourself as well because otherwise you'd be crying during the performance and you wouldn't be able to be the actor that you need to be to get the words across to the audience.
With you, Mother, In filth and sludge and hunger, we suffer here, cast into a pit of darkness, of infinite pain, held down by our masters, deprived of our rights. Mother mine, we shall walk forever together.
It was their way of resistance. It was the way they resisted against it all. It was practically the only way how to face the reduced circumstances. They had to keep their mind busy with this. Their children knew it, and the people educating them secretly in the homes knew it. That the only way how to protect the children from all the evil they see around themselves in the ghetto, because the streets were full of dead bodies and people were dying on every corner, especially the elderly Jews. The only way how to protect them was to create a life similar, looking to the old life of the children.
One of the boys, they decided to write an anthem.
Each meeting would begin with the singing of that anthem. Here are the words to the song.
What joy is ours after the strife? In number 1, we've made our bid. Self-government has come to life. Long live the Republic of Szkid.
The Szkid, our emblem was Szkid, which means Szkola imieni Dostojewskiego, which is school in the name of Dostoevsky.
In fact, Sydney drew this emblem, the emblem for the Republic of Szkid.
It was based on Dostoevsky's organization during the 1800s in Russia, when he was collecting the underprivileged and orphans and brought them to a home to bring them off the streets. And this is what Professor Eisinger suggested to us, that we do it ourselves, since some of them didn't have parents and some of the parents couldn't see us. So he thought that we should make ourselves a friendship with each other.
Then his ingenious idea was to say, you guys run your own affairs and I'm here if you need me, but you decide everything. So we thought we will call it a Republic of Szkid.
Every person is our brother, whether a Christian or a Jew. Proudly we are marching forward. The Republic of Szkid is me and you.
Then there was one boy which also perished, whose name was Hanush Hachenberg, who was a genius.
Hanush Hachenberg, you see, that's him. That means I knew him very well.
Today, death holds his filthy hand over the world and over my soul. But the cup, fashioned of skulls, with brains shriveled and dried, will overflow, and all the bones, the blood, the muscles call. Life, life, life.
I think these poems are just wonderful.
Eisinger was really driver. He wanted it to. He was one of the guys who really pushed it. He pushed better, and he had a good helper in Ginz.
Peter Ginz was our editor.
Peter Ginz, who decided that we should write a newspaper.
Yes, my brother went to Terezin in 42 when he was 14 years old. Actually, it was him who invented Vedem. It was his idea.
To describe their life in Terezin, and mostly humor and many events which happened there.
I walk the streets alone and alone, pondering the evil in the world, and thoughts about it fill my mind as I walk the dark streets alone and alone.
No, he was the one who said, listen, you go around, with the horses, write something about what should be interesting.
He gave assignment to every one of us to write an article.
They forced me to write an article about the heating in Terezin. Poněvadž je tu dosti materiálu, dělal jsem mnoho velkých staveb. And when I read it today, I'm still embarrassed. But, because I definitely wasn't one of the writers.
First of all, we had to read it on Friday night in front of all the kids. And it was critiqued, and then it was given to him. He rewrote it and put it behind his bunk for safekeeping.
In Terezin there was a little house, L417, and in this house there was home 1, and in this home there lived a little boy, and his name was Peter Gins.
He was my buddy, real buddy. He used to get packages from his mother because his mother was Gentile and his father's Jewish. So we were somewhat close, and whenever he got a package, we were getting packages, he always gave me something. So we were quite close.
We all thought, including my brother, that the war must end in 1, 2, mostly 3 months. We were also naive. So this was the explanation that don't you worry, it will end very soon.
Peter Gins urged the other boys to write about what they knew.
I hated writing. As a matter of fact, when I wrote that article about the crematorium, Gins had to force me into it. He said, look, you're working in there, you know what the heck is it all about, write it. So I wrote it. And that's my drawing, by the way.
To go with the article he wrote.
Many of you surely ask yourself the question, what is cremation and what does a crematorium look like?
First, something about cremation. The most interesting part about the crematorium is the furnace.
Before the crematorium was built, the bodies were buried in individual or mass graves until there was no more room for them.
My job was just to bring it over there and pick up the wagon which was left there from the previous delivery and just take it back. That's all. My job was just strictly delivering there.
Delivering the bodies?
The bodies. I had never seen a dead person, before. And to me it was, I don't know, I just can't express it. But after a while, it became so, it became just normal. It's just that person. So, as a matter of fact, towards the end, I had an assignment. There was a small fortress called, where the hard political prisoners were kept. It's outside the ghetto. And when the Germans were leaving, they put some of these prisoners against the wall and, mow them down. And this was in beginning of May. And they were sitting there in the sun. And I was called there to bring these bodies to the crematorium. So they loaded it. There no caskets. They just, heaped them on the wagon. And the smell was already, it's real bad. So when I got to the crematorium, they poured lime over it. And that, I left the wagon there and just went home, just guiding the horses. I didn't want any part of it. That was really, real bad.
It's really fabulous to be with you guys. I am a fan of the boy choir. The piece that we're going to do this spring is a piece that's being written just for you. It's a work that we commissioned, and that work is called Venom.
Well, the storyline is very, very simple. There's a life. They're transported from this life in the city of Prague to Terezin. In Terezin, They miss their homes, they miss their parents, and their teachers take on a kind of parental role in their lives. They develop this magazine, Vedum, which they publish every Friday. And Vedum develops a kind of life of its own. It becomes a celebration of their lives and a way of keeping the spirit alive in spite of all this.
We saw the transports. I know we were just starting cold, but that's pretty important. And what I try to do with the music is dramatize it, you know, and with the words that my librettist created around the poetry. Which, da, da. And then, yeah, just da 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 da. And then, yeah, let's just try that, yeah.
The very wonderful, gifted composer, Laurie Laitman, has created this piece. It's a Holocaust oratorio. It's work that contains chorus and some soloists, and it tells a story. About 15 years ago, before you were born, a book came out called Vedum, We Are Children Just the Same, and it contains some of the secret poetry in articles and essays and illustrations that these boys put together during the years of 1942 to 1944. And I'm always thinking about works that we can commission on stories that are important to tell. And I thought this was a very important story to tell because some of the writings, some of the poetry that these young people put together, and they did it, as I said, in secret, at the fear that if anyone knew about it, they would be murdered instantly. But I knew I needed a boy choir, and I realized, here's our boy choir. We're ready for this piece.
I'm thrilled that somebody is making a concert out of the beautiful poems and the poetry that the boys wrote. I think it's an honor, and I think it's marvelous.
Yeah, much better. Keep that.
One verbal motif that's working through the libretto is the desire of these voices, and I'm conceiving of these voices as being the voices of those who perished for the most part.
And ash, not snow, was falling from the foolish sky.
To have their story told, to have it heard. So they're singing, "Hear my story now."
Hear a story now.
Or "Hear our story now."
Hear a story now.
Nice and dark here, really rich and thick, and then much brighter and happier. 2, 3, 1.
Like rats in Terezin.
She was able to involve the beauty of the story and the human spirit that sort of emerges through the story, but also using a dissonant sort of harmony to show the clash of the culture, to show the terrible things that were going on.
Our teachers gave us hope in Terezin.
There's always an undercurrent in that music.
Some of us had made a magazine.
On making sure that the melody doesn't disappear when it gets low like that. Okay. Let's do that again, guys.
We wanted life like you. We drew and wrote and sang our dreams and wept when we were lonely.
We've grown pretty fast. We learned a lot of things too quick.
No childhood. It was robbed from you.
Completely.
It was 22,000 urns altogether. It took in total 4 days to empty all the urns with all the ashes collected into the local river called Ohře. A group of prisoners from the Jewish ghetto was picked to build a human chain and load all the ashes on trucks, on cars. They transferred the ashes in the urns to this riverside, and the prisoners were emptying it As it was thousands of boxes with the ashes, it took nearly 4 days to empty it all into the river.
Well, they tried to bury the evidence, but it was nonsense, the same as they tried to bury the evidence everywhere. There were things which were much worse than just throwing the ashes away.
But the day will come when all this will end. The day will come when we shall live again.
It was a fairly big classroom, but still to have 42, to squeeze 42 beds into this little, into one room is not easy. So we had three-tier bunk beds where always 2 boys slept next to each other.
We stayed in that room, and half of us, through the help of the various teachers, half of us would work and half of us would study up in the attic. So we had an education there.
One of the boys was standing outside, standing guard, if somebody comes to warn the others.
There was a lot of writing to be done with songs and everything. We had a life there when I was there.
I started working on Memories of Prague, which is by Peter Gintz, and that's the first of the poems in this oratorio. In this piece that I'm creating now, Videm, it's not only setting the poetry of the actual boys, but setting the story that David Mason wrote about the boys.
This morning at 7, so bright and so early, 5 novels later, sewn up in a sack, like all of our lives. They lay there so silent, all 5.
I think it says that the human spirit is a marvelous thing.
What do you remember about the fear that the boys had? And you must have talked to each other about that.
The fear was not to go on a transport. That was our biggest fear.
I was also curious what's going on in Auschwitz. With a feeling, maybe, we know, you say it 100% that nobody will be alive, nobody will come out, but you never know. And children are much more realistic than grown-ups. Grown-ups have fantasies that some miracle will happen and they will, something will happen. We know it's impossible.
By the end, Every boy who passed through Home 1 was transported east, all except one.
And this boy is Denek Tausig, who lives in the United States.
And so when I was in the transport, my father told him, look, my son is in the transport, can you take him out? I need him in the blacksmith. And he took me out of the transport. So I have to thank my father, really, that he saved the whole family, really. All the other guys just went to Auschwitz.
The only one left of the more than 100 boys. It was just Sidney Tausig in Home 1, but keeping him company, 788 pages of the secret magazine Vedum.
I took it and I didn't want to be caught with it. Really, you know, if you get caught with it and you have some historical, we had all kinds of things written in there, and so I might have wound up just because of the magazine going into a transport. So what are we going to do with it? So we just buried it.
Sidney Tausig buried Vedum behind his father's blacksmith shop, protecting and placing the manuscript in metal urns.
In a metal container which my father made out of some oil cans, whatever it was. And we buried it.
Sidney and his father dug it up after they were liberated.
And how was it when you finally took it out of the ground?
You know, it was pretty good because it was really safe. My father really packed it good.
Vedum is extraordinary because it is in practice complete edition, you know. All the copies are collected and survived.
So it's just wonderful that he loved his friends and valued what they did enough to save 800 pages of this material, bury it, and make sure that it could be retrieved after the war. That's an extraordinary thing. It's so great that he did that. We all owe him a lot.
In Terezin, the mind was free, the hand was free to paint and draw. People somewhere slept on peacefully, but we knew fear, more fear, oh, so much fear at what we saw.
To have the foresight to realize that that is a piece of art, that is something that you need to preserve and that you need to keep. It was so cool that he was able to put it in the urn and bury it, and that it's still here with us today.
I'm very grateful for this, and it's amazing it was saved.
I was lucky that I stayed in the camp.
We didn't know till we got to Auschwitz what was happening.
Slowly boys one after the other went, and in the end I went in the first round. There were 10 transports already when it was obvious that the Nazis will lose the war. They still sent 20,000 people out east to basically to be killed. And I went with Peter Gins and with Hanush Beck.
Nobody thought that he's going to his death, actually.
Unfortunately, I was the only one who went to the right way when they say to the right or to the left. And at that point, I thought that I am in the bad group because I thought we are going on hard labor and they go on light labor, right? And I didn't realize they were going straight to a gas chamber.
It was unimaginable. It couldn't be imagined, such a thing. It was beyond the fantasy.
We marched from Blechhammer to Buchenwald. There was the Death March, of course, very well known. It was a very long death march. Every time when I already was completely down, in my mind, in my thing, the music I heard, I always sort of was humming it. Da 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 da. That music affected me terribly all the time, and just simply I kept going and I kept going and I kept going.
And people were dying all over the place, in front of him, behind him, to the side, left, right. And he didn't tell anybody because he thought some people would think he was crazy.
I felt better. It lifted me up.
The first person he ever told was Minna, and then the second person was me.
And he said, that tune, that melody kept me alive. He said, on the death march, when I was on the death march for 70 kilometers, no food, starving, everyone in front of me, it was freezing cold in January, everybody was falling and dying in front of me. I kept on singing that melody in my mind over and over and over.
Somehow or other, it made me walk more.
I still, when I think about it, you know, I get goosebumps because it speaks to the power of music.
I put it in. I mean, I didn't put the entire humoresque in, but the whole theme, dum da 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 dum. It worked perfectly in here.
I've had keys, 2 dresses, a cap and a hat. Oh, can a chap get his arms around that?
It's a big day.
Emil Koppel has traveled to Seattle, Washington from Melbourne, Australia. Emil hasn't seen George Brady since they were together as boys.
As I studied Jojo, right? I'm just
Boy,
saying after so many years.
Recognize you right away, huh?
Well, yeah, of course.
Like how we do.
Marvelous, isn't it? What is it, 60 years, 65 years?
65 years.
65
That's
years.
right, yeah.
Wow.
Except you are the only one I didn't know where to find you. You know.
George has traveled from Toronto, Canada.
How are you? Long time no see.
That's
Long
right.
time
Yeah,
no
Lord
see.
bless you.
Sydney Taussig traveled from West Palm Beach, Florida to be here.
What is
When
it?
I left in Terezin, I asked everybody to sign it. You know.
Yes.
So here's Peter
I couldn't
Gibbs.
find it, and finally I found it here. You see, M. Kopelovic.
Leo Lowy will join the 3 others later in the weekend.
That's your handwriting.
Leo will travel from his home in Hackensack, New Jersey. As for Yehuda Bacone, he has sent his regrets from Israel. He won't be able to attend the world premiere of Vedem.
Yeah.
You're listening to the boys' anthem that started the meetings every Friday night.
Chlapcu republikskit.
So now we can sing it. Just wanted to say that if 1944 in Auschwitz somebody would have told you that we will sit in Seattle 65 years old from now, I would have, what would you have said? Probably we died and we are in heaven, you know. And the beautiful thing is that we didn't have to die to be in heaven.
You took it away from me. I was going to say it.
How many of you are here? 40. Okay. So just imagine in our room there were 42 of us in one room, which was not even as big as this one. And in the beginning, we were not even allowed to get out of the building, you know. And it was, we had bed bugs and fleas and lice, and we had in the room, during the time we were there, we had polio, we had typhoid, encephalitis, all sorts of stuff.
In the ghetto, in the Terezin, it was okay. These guys, they went to Auschwitz, but I stayed in the ghetto. I was the only one from over 100 people we had in the home who stayed there.
There were 100 boys who contributed to this magazine. Only one of them stayed in Terezin, lucky enough for us, because he saved the magazine, and 99 of us went mainly to Auschwitz. Unfortunately, the most talented ones, which was Peter Ginz and Hanush Hachenburg and so, did not survive. And somehow we always feel it's our duty to keep the memory of them alive.
And we dedicate this performance to all of those who died too young. He sustained himself by replaying the melody of the Dvorak Humoresque in his mind. In Emil's inspiring words, the Dvorak Humoresque meant everything to me at a time when there was very little humanity in my life. It encouraged me to take one more step and then another. We speak of the power of music as a life-giving force. And Emil's story is a profound example of just that. We can never forget that Vedam's story does not belong to us. It belongs to the boys whose courage gave the world this remarkable legacy.
I'm very happy to be here with my daughter.
I want to introduce my wife, Marianne, and we've been married now 57 years.
This is my daughter, Roslyn. That's my son, Nathan.
That's my wife, Evelyn Lowy, who I'm married 58 years. A wonderful, wonderful wife.
The Boys of Terezin. Emil Koppel.
I really broke down, I did.
George Brady.
It was spectacular, really, really. We never expected anything like this, you know.
Sidney Towson.
Sitting there, I was thinking about the guys who couldn't make it. Why we made it, who knows? It just, I just can't explain it.
Leo Lowy.
It's really a memorial to our friends. I hope they could listen wherever they are.
See it, yeah.
You think they were?
I hope so.
Are they watching it from above?
da 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 da